Hello, we come to chapter 10 in the Screwtape letters. And the patient has found new friends. Of course, Screwtape is looking at how these particular friends can be used to help to catch this particular patient. He says to Wormwood, I gather that the middle-aged married couple who called at his office are just the sort of people we want him to know. Rich, smart, superficially intellectual, and brightly skeptical about everything in the world. I gather they're even vaguely pacifist, not on moral grounds, but from an ingrained habit of belittling anything that concerns the great mass of their fellow men, and from a dash of purely fashionable and literary communism. In that idea that these people kind of decided that, oh no, we're kind of the in crowd. We know what's better than everybody else. On one side, it kind of reminds me of that song by Groucho Marx in the movie Horse Feathers. Whatever it is, I'm against it. If the rest of humanity believes this, then there's no way that we're going to go along with it. They're always being contrarian. But I guess another way of looking at it, it reminds me of the Pharisee, in the gospel. Thank you, Lord, for not making me like other men. These people that have that idea that no, I'm not like everybody else. The fact of the matter is, all of us are like everybody else. But again, if the man could be start to convinced by these people that, oh no, you have to kind of separate yourself from everybody else. Of course, we know that these are the wrong kind of people for him to be with. And Wormwood is told, no doubt he must very soon realize that his own faith is in direct opposition to the assumptions on which the conversation of his new friends is based. There's going to be a time at which he suddenly realizes, wait a minute, maybe these aren't exactly the kind of people that I should be around. But he said with the aim of shame, pride, modesty, and vanity, be able to keep him in what they call the false position. He'll be silent when he ought to speak and laugh when he ought to be silent. Rather than speaking up at those times, you just got to stand back. Again, he doesn't want to challenge out of his own pride and modesty and vanity or shame. He doesn't want to challenge those around him, whereas really it's something that he should be doing. He should be doing it because, as Screwtape says, he will assume at first, only by his manner, but presently by his words, all sorts of cynical and skeptical attitudes, which are not really his. He wants to try to fit in. He wants to try to belong. So he's going to say those things that make it sound like he belongs. But Wormwood is told, but if you play him well, they may become his. All mortals tend to turn into the thing that they are pretending to be. Again, if we put up a false front, we're just trying to go along, we're just trying to belong to a particular group, we may find ourselves suddenly becoming really a part of that, even if we're saying, well, no, I don't believe it. So that somebody could say, I really don't like using foul language. I don't like you using cuss words. That's not really who I am. But at the place where I work, that's what everybody does, and so that's what I do to fit in. I would say, well, you know what? Then you become that kind of person. Whether you're using it to fit in or not, it's still the fact of this is the kind of thing that you are doing. Wormwood is warned, the first thing is to delay as long as possible the moment at which he realizes this new pleasure as a temptation, the new pleasure of the company of those people. Since the enemy's servants have been preaching about the world as one of the great standard temptations for 2,000 years, this might seem difficult to do. But fortunately, they have said very little about it for the last few decades. In modern Christian writings, although I see much, indeed more than I like, about mammon, money, I see few of the old warnings about worldly vanities, the choice of friends, and the value of time. Again, we're not warned as much as we probably should be about being attracted to the things of this world. The fact that the people we have as friends are going to help form us into the people that we're meant to be. So we should choose the right people, and I don't mean right like the in crowd, but those who share our faith, those who share a common belief that we do, to help us together to move along towards God. We talk about the value of time, that we're only given so much time. As I always say, Bill Gates and the poor man on the street each only have 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in an hour, and 60 seconds in a minute. Again, time has a particular value in and of itself. We have to figure out how are we using that time the best we can. Screwtape says, all that your patient would probably classify as Puritanism, and may I remark in passing, the value which we have given to that word is one of the real solid triumphs of the last 100 years. When we think of Puritans, we merely think of people who aren't having any fun. I think it was H.L. Mencken once described a Puritan who has the fear that somewhere, out there, somebody is having a good time. When we were told by changing the word of the understanding of Puritanism, we rescue annually thousands of humans from temperance, chastity, and sobriety of life. Again, those good things, and if we start to mark those off as, oh, that's just being Puritanism, we don't try to do them. It's not Puritanism, it's following the Lord as we are meant to ask. Screwtape says, sooner or later, however, the real nature of his new friends must become clear to him, and then your tactics must depend on the patient's intelligence. If he is a big enough fool, you can get him to realize the character of his friends only while they are absent. In their presence, he can be made to sweep away all criticism. That idea, well, when they're away, yeah, maybe that isn't the best person for me to be around. But when I'm with them, you know what? They're a lot of fun. Or if this succeeds, you can be induced to live, as I have known many humans to live for quite long periods, two parallel lives. You'll not only appear to be, but actually be a different man in each of the circles that he frequents. Again, you can say, okay, this is the particular church face that you have, or this is when I'm with this particular group, but when I'm with this other group, I can be something different. The challenge is that's not living out wholeness. We are meant to be whole as human beings. Again, not dividing ourselves into two parts where we can say, okay, I'm this in one place and this in the other. The wholeness calls us to integrity, literally wholeness, to be integrated, made into one. We need to be integrated, and we need to live out the same person we are in all places. And obviously the person we are meant to be is the one that God calls us to be. We're told, failing this, there's a subtle and more entertaining method. It can be made to take on a positive pleasure in the two sides of his life are inconsistent. He may say, hey, you know what? I know these two sides are different, but I can live it. It says this is done by exploiting his vanity. He can be taught to enjoy kneeling beside the grocer on Sunday, just because he remembers the grocer could not possibly understand the urbane and mocking world which he inhabited on Saturday evening. And contrariwise, to enjoy the body of blasphemy over coffee with these admirable friends, all the more because he is aware of a deeper spiritual world within him which they cannot understand. Again, we're really getting into the Phariseeism here. Thank you for not making me like, these other people. You can kind of say, I know I'm better than both these people, both these groups at the same time. Thus, while being permanently treacherous to at least two sets of people, you will feel instead of shame a continual undercurrent of self-satisfaction. But then Wormwood is warned. Meanwhile, you of course take the obvious precaution of seeing that this new development induces him to spend more time than he can afford and to neglect his work and his mother. Again, the one warning is that you can't let these new friends, these other people, get him away from the people that are truly the challenges to him in his life right now. We got to keep him in those. But of course, we know there's always the chance that that's going to turn out in a different way. Of course, Screwtape the liar wants it to go one way, but we know that even those ideas, like somebody once said, when you find those people who are really difficult, do you see them as merely opportunities for sin, being difficult, or do you see them as opportunities to grow in holiness and to grow in the virtues? And so, again, it still can backfire on Screwtape, but he's counting on, let's make sure he doesn't still get away from those people we know he's got the problems with. So again, any questions that you might have and anything I covered, or maybe some stuff that I didn't. Again, I'm not covering every single section in depth. If you read something and that I didn't talk about and you're wondering about it, send me an email at my parish email address, and I'll try to answer it in a future session. Again, I didn't get any from last week, or I did a couple, but not enough to get me to the point that I could spend a whole session just answering those questions. So we'll wait for them to come in a little bit, and then I'll answer those all when I gather them together.